Hey you! I'm Azarelli, a 27-year-old who was diagnosed with autism, anxiety, dyslexia, and ADHD. So today I just want to talk about what led me to believe I was autistic and the process of getting actually tested. Because before you get tested clinically by a psychiatrist, you're not 100% sure. Self-diagnosis is a credible and very common practice among the autistic community simply because finding a therapist or a psychiatrist who actually does adult testing is pretty rare, and not to mention expensive, especially if you live in America where the medical system is trash. It's also incredibly common for women who have children who are autistic to get tested themselves later in life and then find out they're autistic that way. But in my case, I actually don't have any children. I'm child-free for personal reasons, but that's like another can of worms we can get into later. Y'all know what I'm talking about when your family's asking you to have babies and you're like, no thank you. But anyways, I brought this up to my mom when I was much younger, around 21, 22, just to see what she would say, like if I acted any differently when I was a kid or if I had any odd traits here or there, and what she told me really blew me away. She ended up telling me that as soon as I popped out, I had odd behavior that's not normal for kids or babies. Like I would slam my head against the crib, I would rock and slam my back against whatever I was sitting on, like the car seat or a chair, it doesn't matter. I would just slam super hard. I'd also, when I was a little older, probably around 8 or 7, I started getting so mad I would gag, and it was just an uncontrollable anger. And I remember being that angry, but it was just crazy. I did grow up an only child on my mother's side, and I didn't have any way to see if what I was doing was normal. So I guess when I was younger, I would assume that anything I did, everyone else did. I never really questioned it, so I didn't really understand that something was different until I was much older. When I was a baby, much younger, my mom did have concerns and she wanted to take me to a doctor to see if there was anything wrong. But my grandma actually told her not to because my father, uncles, and cousins all did the same thing, where they would rock and be repetitive and even tick and slam their head against things, and that was normal and not to worry. So she never took me to get tested. My family never just thought anything was wrong because that was just a norm for them. I was always the black sheep of my family. At least on my mom's side, they're Dominican, and I refused to speak Spanish when I was a lot younger. I didn't even like talking, to be honest with you. I only talked when I absolutely had to, and I'm still that way with people unless you're in my personal bubble of friends or support family now. I also remember wondering how people were able to socialize so easily and talk to people and just have an easy conversation without having to think about what you needed to say. It just came so natural to them. So I always wondered how I could teach myself how to do it, which is interesting because, you know, most people when they have a social interaction, especially when you're younger, you don't think, oh, I have to teach myself how to do something. It just comes to you, even if you're not articulate, because, you know, babies have great speech patterns. But it's just interesting to look back on all of that and realize that it was so obvious, but I didn't know and my family didn't know. So it just went unnoticed. And on the note where I thought I had to teach myself how to be social and how to enjoy talking to people, I actually started copying my mom's personality, where she's really funny and people always flocked to her, and she made friends no matter where she was so easily, and I just didn't have that ability, so I just started copying her, and it was a really big effort to have that happen. I did have a monotone speech pattern when I was younger. It was kind of odd and it really stood out. I did notice that this was causing some issues, at least in my social life when I was younger, so I also started copying the way my mom speaks in that side of the family, which is really common in girls with ASD, as I will make a video later talking about all the symptoms and signs. In my early 20s, around 21, 22, I would say, I've heard the term autism and ASD and all those things, but I never really thought it would apply to me, because usually when you see anyone mention any type of term or allude to it in any way, it's usually young boys who are white and their mom is having a hard time coping, controlling them. And it was just so interesting to see, because I've noticed, looking back, I was a really quiet kid, and my anxiety was so bad even as an adolescent. I just was quiet and trying not to draw attention to myself, and I never wanted to get in trouble because I just didn't want the attention. So it's just interesting to see the differences and contrast how like it can affect the two different genders, at least personally me and what I've seen or heard about. So I really honestly thought that it wasn't what I had, or it had nothing to do with me. It was irrelevant in my life until I looked into it and I got a little more curious, because I really wanted to find what the actual definition was. I did stumble upon a list of autistic traits in females, and it really, I don't know, it like threw me for a loop, because I got really scared. I didn't know why I related so hard to this list of symptoms, and you never have someone there to explain it to you, especially if you're undiagnosed. And I masked so hard that I fooled myself, honestly. And I thought to myself, if this was the case, it actually answered a lot of the questions I've had for years about myself, because I just never really understood what was going on. It was basically around this time I decided to start taking tests online to see if there was any credibility to what I thought was happening, and if I even should go ahead and find a psychiatrist to get tested. I took, I want to say, at least 50 tests over the course of like a year and a half, just because I wanted to really make sure before I put in all that effort and time and even money. Because at this time I did have health insurance, as I worked full time, and I still do, but I was worried that it wouldn't even cover everything, since I was an adult and I technically aged out of any help that would be given, or at least that I've seen. When I decided to finally go out and look for someone to test me, I didn't expect how hard it would be. I tried to find a psychiatrist to test me. I contacted psychologists and therapists to maybe find a referral to help find someone who would be willing and able to test me. I spent months really looking for someone, and it was so interesting because I would call whichever place I was calling that day, and everything would be fine, normal. They would ask me for information and, you know, all my contact info and any problems I'm having. And then once I mentioned that I was looking to be tested for Asperger's or adult autism, suddenly they would talk to me like an infant. It was so weird. I even had places tell me that they were going to call me back or email me, get in contact with me somehow, to wait for them a week, 2, maybe even a month, and they would just ghost me. That was insane. They would really just ghost me instead of just telling me that they couldn't care for me, which would be easier. At least I wouldn't waste my time waiting around for someone to call me or email me. After 2 years of looking, I finally found a psychiatrist who was willing and able to make an appointment for me and sit down with me and give me an adult ASD test, which was great. The waiting time did kill me. I had to wait about 4 months to actually go in and see him. It was insane. I was excited because I finally had the opportunity to do something I really wanted to do and get answers for myself, but I was also terrified because I wasn't sure what I wanted the answer to be. Either way, I would have been happy. I just wanted to get an answer, but if I wasn't, then there was something wrong with me, and I wouldn't understand myself better, and I wouldn't have the answers I need, or maybe I was looking into it or making things up. But if I was, you'd find yourself having an identity crisis, which I in fact did, but we'll get to that. I will make a video of the test in detail, as it was some things I really didn't expect. It was kind of like an SAT almost. I remember specifically I had to call out of work that day. I did take a sick day, and it was 5 hours in total. 4 hours of actual testing and an hour in between for lunch/break. After all the testing, I remember being drained. It was just so tiring because it was mostly one-on-one, but it was with someone I didn't know, and that always stresses me out. So by the end of the day, I was exhausted, and I did sit down with him and ask him what he thought. He told me that I was definitely on the spectrum. It just kind of blew my mind, really. I didn't really know what to think. I was already so tired. I just wanted to go home and see my animals. He did tell me to wait for the final results, which was a psych evaluation form, I think it was. And the psych evaluation, it's basically 10 pages of all the information that he took down and all the results of every test that he did. And it took about 6 weeks to come in. I did want to wait until I got the official report to really just absorb the information and really take it in, because at this point I was having a self-identity crisis. I really didn't know who I was, and I guess I had to learn myself from scratch, really. And I just turned 26 at this point. Deep down, I really did think that I knew everything there was to know about myself, but I guess I was wrong. I also had a huge case of imposter syndrome, where I kind of, I guess, gaslit myself into thinking that I didn't have anything and I was perfectly fine. I was making things up. I was lying to get attention. It was just really weird. And also, this was around the time where TikTok had that trend going on where people were faking mental illness. So it didn't really help my case at all. I kind of looked into it and I found a lot of people had the same thing with late diagnosis, where you don't really believe it or you think you're lying, but a clinical professional diagnosed you, so you just have to, I guess, convince yourself that you aren't lying. After some time, I did share the information with my doctors, mostly my gynecologist and my my main doctor, general practitioner, and they both didn't believe me. My GP asked for the assessment so he could read it himself, and after that, he didn't really bring it up, so I guess he believes it because it's an official document and all the test scores and all the different tests that I was given, and it was just interesting. I do appreciate him a lot as he's a good doctor, and I can understand why some people wouldn't believe me, especially I wouldn't believe myself because I didn't even know the symptoms and all the things that people go through with this. Even though I was living it, I just didn't know. So how can you know if you don't know, you know? It did take me about 5 years to get properly diagnosed. I was self-diagnosed for about a year, but I just didn't really want to say anything to anyone just in case I was wrong. So I kind of kept that information to myself. I am currently looking for a therapist to help me with my anxiety. It's gone down so much more, like 1,000%. But there's still some anxiety there, and I guess it's an old habit that's hard to break, really. It's been kind of hard because as soon as I tell someone I'm an adult with ASD, they automatically say, oh, we can't help you. But I do know someone who can help you with ABA therapy, and that's absolutely not something I want to do. I was lucky enough to have health insurance and have them cover most of the cost of getting tested, but it has made things a little difficult going forward as most people aren't experienced with dealing with adults with ASD. It's most services are for children and support for the parents of children with ASD. So it's just frustrating to say the least. I even looked into support groups and I can't really find one. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. And what I'm looking for is a support group where adults who've been diagnosed I would say 22 and up, because I know a lot of programs extend the support until age 22. But I guess adult 18 plus would be great. But I haven't really found any, so maybe I'm not looking in the right places. But if someone were to ask me if I would do it all over again, I absolutely would. Learning that I'm on the spectrum has helped my life in so many ways, and it's helped me mentally and physically and in just every way I could think of. I was absolutely struggling in so many different ways that I wasn't even realizing. I always thought it was normal for people to struggle with so many different areas in their life, but everyone just kept it quiet. It was just a secret, which obviously now is silly, but it's just what you think when you don't have an answer for what's going on. Learning that you're on the spectrum helps you understand yourself in a way I don't think I would have ever if I didn't find out. And I do understand why I wasn't diagnosed at a younger age, even though there were very obvious signs that I wasn't in the norm with, the head banging and rocking and all the other good things. A lot of ethnic communities don't really talk about or even acknowledge mental health and mental illness. I'm Azarelli, a 27-year-old who was diagnosed with autism, anxiety, dyslexia, and ADHD. That definitely takes a toll, because if you don't have your health, including mental health, you don't have anything, and it's just something that's super important and people should be more aware of. That is why I started this YouTube channel. I just wanted to talk about my experiences and maybe help other people who have gone through the same thing, because you think you know what's going on, or you try to hide it, or something's not right, but you're not sure what it is. And the stigma that comes with that, it's just unbearable sometimes. You'd rather deal with the issues you're having than have to deal with, your community and your family and all those things. I did tell my mom when I got officially diagnosed, and she didn't really know what to do with this information. My situation is unique. I did not grow up with her. I grew up with my grandma, but I am very close to my mom now. And she didn't really know what to do. She didn't understand it at all at first. I had to tell her all the signs that I had and all the things that I struggled with. But it did lead to my half-sister getting diagnosed. She is 7, and it just made me feel so much better, because she won't have to go through the experiences and the struggles that I went through. And even if she does, she'll have a support system, and she'll know how to deal with it and understand what's happening. But I do hope this was helpful. My journey to getting diagnosed has been a weird and long one, but it's been helpful. And hopefully you found this somewhat helpful, somewhat interesting as well. Thanks for listening, and if you want to get in contact with me, you can email me or you can @ me at Twitter. Bye!